The Overwhelmed Brain is a proud member of the Healing Broadcast Network. Are you annoyed by affirmations? When someone comes up to you and says, "Happy Thanksgiving," do you say, "Wow, thanks a lot, you too"? That's right, it's a quick Thanksgiving episode. To all of you that celebrate, and to those of you who don't, well, just look at it this way. You get an episode a few days early. So let's get this thing started now. This is Paul Coliani, host of The Overwhelmed Brain, the personal growth show for the critical thinker. On every episode, we'll talk about practical, down-to-earth steps to help you improve your mood and keep you sane in this powerful journey we call life. I want to help you bridge the gap between your emotions and reason, causing you to discover why you do the things you do and what you can do to reach higher levels of happiness and lower levels of stress and overwhelm. And if you're here to learn more common sense tips for improving your life, you're in the wrong place. This is the direct path to uncommon sense, and that's why it's going to help you learn, heal, grow, and evolve. My ultimate goal is to help you become empowered so that you can create the life you want. And you heard today's intro. It's going to be a quick Thanksgiving episode. And for those of you that celebrate, I hope you enjoy this wonderful holiday where you can be grateful for something in your life, anything in your life. And if you're listening going, of course, I'm grateful for 100,000 things in my life. Or if you're listening and you're going, well, I'm alone. What do I have to be grateful for? Or this happened, so why should I be grateful? Well, if you heard my last episode, you heard at the end, if you listened the whole way through, me talking about starting a gratitude journal. Now, coincidentally, I haven't written it in about 2 days, but that's okay because when I think of something I'm grateful for, I just write it down. Now, I'm not a huge advocate for gratitude journals because I've never really thought that writing this stuff down really meant anything. Okay, I'm grateful. I'll write it down and okay, I got the job done. Am I still grateful? I don't know. It just never really resonated with me to have a gratitude journal. And quite honestly, I don't think about it all too often. But when you do take the time to write things down that you're grateful for, it stops your brain long enough to be in gratitude. Now, what I mean by that is that our brains are always in motion. They're always thinking. They're always thinking about the next thing. What am I going to do? What am I going to say? What am I going to wear? There's always a question going on or some scenario that we're playing out so we can take the next step in life. But when do you just stop? And when you can do that, that is a moment to be grateful. I don't mean you have to be grateful for your parents or your family or, the world or the whales. Whatever you want to be grateful for is fine. But when you don't feel grateful for much of anything, just stop and be with yourself for that moment. And when you're with yourself in that silence, that is a moment that you give to yourself. Even if you have no gratitude whatsoever or appreciation for anything, just stop and be present. Be in that moment. When you do that, it changes your state. It changes the speed at which your brain is going. It's sort of like writing things down. I share that I like to write emotions down, negative emotions, so that I'm not just breezing through them, thinking that I've covered them all and I've addressed them. If I have something going on, I like to write them down or even type them on the computer. I'll type something like, oh, geez, I'm feeling angry. And I'm feeling angry because my girlfriend said something and it triggered this thing in me, and now I'm angry because I think something's going to happen. I don't want to get into too many details, but you get the idea. The point is, if you slow your brain down long enough to write something down, or even just think about it at a slower pace, or even better, just sit in silence and be mindful of what's going through your thoughts, of what's going through your mind, you'll find that you get to connect with yourself in a different way. I know that turning on music helps me connect with myself, but not fully, because I'm still consciously paying attention to the music. But what if I were to shut that music off? What if I were to shut the TV off? What if I got into my car and drove to a place that was peaceful? I remember I used to do that. I used to drive to the beach and look out over the water from my car. It was really nice. And I could just sit there for maybe 30 minutes until I got bored. But all that time, I'm sitting there in silence. It's so rare nowadays. So my whole point isn't that you need a gratitude journal and you start writing things down. My point is, if you stop long enough, either to write them down or just be with you, be mindful, be present, and just sit with that for 30 seconds or 30 minutes, you find that your state changes. It may be subtle, but something has to change because you stopped the rat race going on inside your head. Something about the way you feel has to change because the energy, the flow of neurons inside your brain has slowed down and asked themselves, what's going on? Why did we all stop? What do we do now? And it's kind of a nice place to go, we have nothing to do in this 30 seconds. So that's my Thanksgiving message to you. It's probably the most unorthodox Thanksgiving message you've ever heard. But I wish you a great holiday. And if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, well, I wish you the best damn day you've ever had anyway. I want you to have a fantastic day, a fantastic week, whether you're working at home, whether you're alone or with others, it doesn't matter. Slow those thoughts down. Be with yourself. Be with those thoughts. And if you have something repetitive going on inside your head, slow down long enough to write it out. And maybe you'll feel a shift by the time you're done. So we're going to have one segment today, and then we're going to end the show. It's a unique segment because it's the first time I read a letter and answer it on both video and audio. So if you head over to theoverwhelmedbrain.com and look for the episode titled Overcoming the Suffering of Watching Others Suffer, you'll find me talking on video. And yes, that's what today's letter is about. It's an important one. I wanted to get it out as soon as possible. Again, you don't expect a show this Sunday, so this is Wednesday, November 25th, and we'll have a regular episode at the end of next week, so I look forward to joining you then as well. But let's go on to our first and last segment of this episode called Ask Paul. All right, this next segment is called Ask Paul, where I read a listener email on the air and do my best to answer and help them through the challenges that they're having. And this is a special read because I'm actually doing this on video at the same time as I'm recording on audio. So if you go to my website, at theoverwhelmedbrain.com, you'll be able to see the video as well for the article for this episode. This is the first time I've actually used video to record this segment or any part of this show because when you're recording audio, you can pause and then cut out that pause. You can take out mistakes. You can edit in a way where you sound more perfect than you really are. But with video, you keep going. And when someone edits the video, you can actually see the edits. You can see the transitions. And there may be some edits in this video. I don't know. But I'm going to do my best to read this through. And I've got my little tablet here that shows you the letter I'm going to read right now. So forgive me if this is a little strange how I do this, but here we go. Hi, Paul. I've been a listener of the show for about a year now. It has helped me so much that I even refer it to friends who are now also avid subscribers. Thank you. Telling a friend to listen to TOB is like giving years of advice. I love it. Thanks so much. I've considered writing to you in the past, but normally I can refer to older episodes for guidance. Recently, something has happened in my life that many of your listeners can probably relate to. So I was hoping you could think of about recording an episode around the C word and how to cope when a loved one is affected by cancer or a similar illness. I feel like your change and death episode is close, but what about when the pain is happening right now? And you need to be strong and show sympathy, and you don't know what's around the corner. Just a quick note on what's happening in my life so far. I'm in a job I love. I've got a great relationship, even though we're currently long distance, and my housemate and I get along great. However, about 3 weeks ago, which is probably about 2 months now, because this email, when she wrote it, was about a month ago, and she said it was about 3 weeks before that, so I apologize for the delay in this, but I wanted to address this now as soon as possible because you'll understand why in a minute. It says, about 3 weeks ago, my housemate was feeling unwell for a few days. She complained about pains in her legs and wasn't really herself. She saw a general practitioner who said, "I don't know why you're here." The practitioner said she thought it was just a stomach bug and then sent her home to rest. The next day, she didn't look so well, so I drove her to work in the morning. We both normally walk. And then I found out that she had been unwell at work and then went home for that day. I went back home for the weekend. She said, I went back home for the weekend, and then her mom and dad stayed at our apartment and then ended up taking her home as her health was not improving. Long story short, a burst tumor, and a few misdiagnoses later, she was diagnosed with lymphoma, a cancer in her blood. Thankfully, the risky surgery is no longer the recommended treatment, but she'll be starting chemotherapy soon and potentially next week, so this has probably been happening for a few weeks now. Something I haven't explained yet. This girl has already had 2 major surgeries in her life, and her parents have each given her an organ for her survival. She has been through so much and is so young and full of life, and I'm finding it hard to deal with. For a while, I was going over scenarios and regretting not taking her to the hospital or doing something more, but now I mostly feel really sad for her, and I'm hoping she can fight it. I've tried to give the family space at the apartment in respect for what they're going through, and offer my help whenever I can, but I think that's probably all I can do. My mind is constantly thinking about my friend and her family, and in the mornings when I'm getting ready, I hear her mom and dad cry while they eat their breakfast. It breaks my heart. And then after that, I'm supposed to get out the door and walk to work and be creative and organized. I don't feel like myself. I know we've got a long journey ahead of us, and in between courses of chemo, she will likely return to this apartment, so I know I'm about to witness some horrific things. How will I care for her and take care of myself? How will I continue my own pursuits while remaining compassionate and expressing the emotions that are coming up? I don't want to run away from my friend, and I want to be here during this time, but I can't afford to completely lose my mind, both for my career and financially. The rent won't pay for itself. I'm sure you get a lot of long emails. Yes, I do. So I apologize for adding to them. Don't apologize. It's quite all right. I hope that the extra information helps you to understand where I'm at. I don't think that I'm being a victim. I feel so lucky to live the life I'm in and to have been in the presence of this amazing girl and her equally strong family. And I'm grateful for the time we've had. I'd just love to know what to do next and how to keep moving forward. All my best, Paul. I hope you never stop teaching. Jill. And if you know me well, or if you've been listening to this show, you know that I call everyone Jill, so that's not her real name. So Jill, this is a very tough subject because it involves potential losing someone that you love. It involves someone passing on in your life. And how do you get through this, especially when it hasn't happened yet? You don't even have any closure, so you don't know what's going to happen from day to day. And you also have members of her family, like you said, at breakfast, you can hear them crying about this. That's difficult. It's a difficult thing to be around, and it's a difficult thing to be a friend and know that she may not be there and she's going to suffer. So what do you do? I'm going to give you something that I did with my father. I'll tell you what I did that really helped, but it's probably not what you expect to hear. And this is only my opinion, but it really helped me through the time when my dad had cancer. My father, not my stepfather, but my real father, my blood father, he developed cancer a few years ago. At the time, I hadn't been in touch with him for about 10 years. So what had happened is that we kind of had a falling out. It was more like a silent falling out. We didn't really talk to each other anymore. When we were on speaking terms, he would call and ask me for money. He would borrow money. And I started getting uncomfortable with that. And this is many, many years ago. So I decided to just back off and let him live his life, not talk to him anymore, because I felt uncomfortable. I felt awkward every time I talked with him. So fast forward many years later, or at least half the years later, about 5 years later, I heard a radio show and the guy said, "When's the last time you talked to your father?" And I was like, whoa, that hit me. And I was like, okay, that's true. I haven't talked to my father in a long time. And I listened to him and he said, you know, our fathers, our mothers, our caretakers, they can die at any time. And have you said what you wanted to say to them before that happens? And he went through some scenarios and it really hit me. And so I took from that what I needed to do. Now, what I did wasn't probably what you expect or anyone expected. What I did was decide to imagine that he did pass. Instead of calling him and say, "Dad, it's been a while. Let's get back together. Let's talk, or let's make some peace here." Instead of doing that, I decided to just accept that he was dead to me. He was still alive, but I chose to accept that he was dead and really bring that into my system and go through the scenario in my mind. Okay, you just get a phone call and the person says your dad died. What would I think? How would I feel? What would I go through? And I went through that. If you've listened to this show a while, you know that I like to try things on. I like to try on how I would feel if the scenario actually took place. So I like to take myself through these worst case scenarios to figure out what'll happen when it happens. So that's what I did. I decided to go, okay, what would happen if I got this phone call that said, my dad is dead? And I really took it on and I went through a grieving process. I grieved that he was actually dead. Now, this is a little strange, but this is sort of where I'm taking you with this, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I'm not going to leave you there. When you grieve someone's death, you go through a process of closure. That process helps your system. It frees your system up from the resistance that you are giving that, from the resistance of them dying. You don't want them to die. You love them and you want them to live and you want them not to suffer. But by going through a process of imagining that this person is no longer around and grieving the loss, it frees you up to love them, to be there for them, to be emotionally stable for them in a way like you've never experienced, in a way that they've never experienced. It is coming to an acceptance that she's gone. I hate to tell you that because it may not happen. It probably won't happen. If she's getting help, she's probably going to make it. But if you come to an acceptance where you go through a grieving process of your loss of her in your life, this will free you up to be emotionally healthy for her, emotionally stable for her. This is really strange advice. I listen to myself and I go, what am I saying? But I think you understand where I'm going. When you get to a point where you are no longer suffering yourself because of her suffering, you can be a whole new light for her. You can be a beacon. That's why I say light. You can be a beacon for her to look, for her to look at you for support, for her to look up to you when she needs strength, when she needs empowerment. That is so important. And if you're a wreck and you're suffering just as much as well, not just as much, but you're suffering because she's suffering and you're crying and you feel so awful, it's going to be hard to be that pillar of strength for her. So again, this is really strange advice, but if you go through a grieving process before anything happens, you will be a stronger person for yourself and especially for her and her family. Now, with my dad, this is exactly what I did. I let him go. I let him go years before he died, many years. And then I got the phone call. It was from my younger brother. And he said, hey, and I hadn't talked to my younger brother in a while either. And he said, hey, bro, Dad has cancer and he's in the hospital. And I don't know how much longer he has to live. And I was surprised. I mean, it wasn't like, hey, I was completely over it, but I was really surprised. And I was like, wow. And then I had to come to new terms with everything I went through and go, okay, am I ready for this? And I was. And I said, okay, I'm booking a flight. I'll be there as soon as possible. And I think within a week I was there. And when I saw my dad, he was in the hospital bed. And I didn't have this weakness come over me. I don't want to call it weakness. But when you see someone suffering, your heart goes out and you're like, oh no. And you almost put yourself where they are. That didn't come over me. I felt more love for my dad than anything. And I just felt strong for him. And one of the first things I said to him was like, wow, Dad, it's been a while. I'm sorry I haven't kept in touch. I'm glad to be here for you now. And I want to do whatever I can to help you. And I was able to approach our relationship in a much better way and a much healthier way. You know, I was a stronger person. When I was younger, I didn't have good personal boundaries, but now I did. So I knew that even if he went back to his old ways, I'd be able to handle it better. It's a whole different story, but being there for him in an emotionally healthy way was the best thing I could do for him. And that's the best thing you can do for your friend as well. And I was there for a few days, and then he was in the hospital, and then he got released, and he went back home, and then I flew home. And then a couple days later, my dad calls me, and he says, I feel better than ever, and I can't wait to connect with you again, and I want to show you this car that I've been looking at. And he just started telling me stories and treating me like a son again, and it felt great. And we had like a 20-minute conversation. By the end of the conversation, I just felt so good that I had reconnected with my dad and that he was suddenly better. But I also felt that was the last time I'd probably ever speak to him. Not because of a choice I was making, but because I realized that he was in a bad way. I realized that when you are so close to death, it's almost like your body shuts systems down so you don't fear it anymore. It's almost like your body says, I'm not going to give you any more pain because you're close to death anyway. I'll just allow you to feel good for these last few days. I know it's weird to have this thought go through my head, but that's exactly what went through my head. I just had the feeling that this was probably the last time I was going to talk to him. So at the time I was married, and I went home and told my wife, he sounds great. He sounds like he's doing well. And that scares me. And she goes, yeah, that sometimes happens. When they're that close to death, they can brighten up and they could just seem like they're healthy again. And yes, a day or two later, he did die. And that was a testing moment. That was me finally understanding, or finally being exposed to what I had imagined many years ago, what I had imagined him dying and how I would react. And I tell you what, when he died, I felt okay with it. We had reconciled and made good with each other, and I loved him in a different way that I've never loved him before. His death wasn't a suffering for me, because I had already done that. I had already done the suffering, so that when he died, I could be there for him and other family members that were grieving as well. And it felt good. And of course, I miss my dad now, and I wish I could have a different relationship with him now. But I also cherish that last phone call that we had together. I cherish those last few days that we had together. And I know that he's no longer suffering. And that made me feel good. He died young. He was 60-something. I should know, but I don't know. But I just know that, I don't want to say he's in a better place, but I know he's in a better place. I just know it. So maybe I do want to say that. And I'm not saying that, when people get better, that's when they're near death, because people can get better and keep getting better from that point on. I mean, there's so many advances in both the medical and alternative healthcare and all kinds of things that we have out there that will help someone get through these things and make their life a lot longer, happier, healthier. So I believe that your friend has a great chance of getting through this and feeling better. So my advice to you, back to where I was, is go through a grieving process now so you can be healthier for her then. This is probably advice that some people will disagree with, and I understand that. Some people might be listening to this or watching this right now going, are you crazy? I probably am, but this is what worked for me. It helped bring closure so that I could let go again of that resistance to things that are happening around me. Once I let go of resisting that, in my case, that my father, what if he dies? I always had that thought, what if my father dies? What am I going to say to him? What am I going to do? How am I going to feel? Because I haven't communicated with him for so long. I chose to just allow him to die in my mind and went through that process. It almost sounds morbid. I don't mean it to be, but when I went through that process, it brought that closure. So how does this help you? I don't know if it's going to help you. This is what I went through. This is what helped me. What can you do? This whole process that I'm telling you now involves addressing the resistance inside of you of what is. What is happening now to you is that you are suffering. You are witnessing suffering. You are empathic towards your friend. She's suffering and she's going to continue suffering. But how can you be okay that that's the way it is? Doesn't mean you have to be like, oh, this is great, it's fine. You just have to be at peace with it. You have to come to a place inside that you go, it's the way it is, and there's nothing I can do about it except be there for the people who need me. How can I help you? How can I serve you? What can I do for you? And in order to be that person, you have to come to some sort of closure in yourself. I hope that makes sense. That's my answer for you. I wish you the best through this. And my heart goes out to you. I feel it. A couple of times during this talk, I just have these tears starting to come up because of what I had to go through. It doesn't mean that I'm completely, invincible with sad emotions with my father's death. I still miss him. I still want him in my life. But this is what I had to do to get through this situation. So I hope it helps you as well. And that's my answer to you. Thank you so much for writing. Thank you so much for listening. And I appreciate you reaching out to me with that question. And I'm sorry again for the delay. And I wish you the best. And my heart goes out to you, your family, and hers and her family. All right, that's it for today's episode. Like I said, it was a quick one. I want to thank Asha at getoutofthemess.com. If you need legal insurance, where you just want to call an attorney and ask a question without having to pay out the nose, ask Asha about legal insurance. She herself pays for the service. It's like $20 a month, and she can connect you with this as well. These are professional teams of attorneys that will spend as much time as you need with them to help you resolve issues. So contact Asha if you want to find out more about this legal service at 678-355-8777 or Asha at getoutofthemess.com. And I want to thank you for listening to another episode of The Overwhelmed Brain. For those of you who have signed up for the Overwhelmed Brain Inner Circle, I have all of your emails and I'll be contacting you soon. For those of you who haven't signed up yet and are interested in what's going to happen with that, just go to theoverwhelmedbrain.com and click on TOB Inner Circle. If you haven't heard, the Inner Circle is where we connect in a private group, and we have a couple group coaching sessions every couple weeks or so, not just with me, but with other coaches, and it should be a lot of fun and learning. So if you want to become a TOB luminary and be part of this special private group, let me know. Click on TOB Inner Circle on the website today. I want to thank everyone who has purchased a book or a worksheet or used the Amazon link to shop as you normally would. You know, we get a lot of people using that link, and I want to thank you personally. I know I don't know who you are, but you are making a difference, so I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you to Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com for some of the music transitions in The Overwhelmed Brain. And since I'm on a thanking spree, I want to thank everyone who leaves reviews for the books I create or the podcast in iTunes. I appreciate you too. Thank you so much. And in conclusion of today's show, I know it was quite a doozy, and I really believe there's probably people out there going, you know, if I'm losing a child, I'm not going to do this process and bring closure to my life. I could never do that. I understand. And I completely agree. Whatever is comfortable for you, that's what I want you to do. And I know when you're in that situation, nothing is comfortable. There are things in this world that we're so attached to, we have so much love for, that we never want them to leave our lives. And, you know, I don't have any consoling words for you if you're in a situation where you're losing someone and there's just no way to get out of the pain. There isn't. There is no way to get out of the pain. So what I recommend is just feel the pain and welcome it. Let it come. Let it overtake you to the point where you just fall on the floor and burst into tears, and whatever needs to happen, because this is inner pain that needs to be expressed outwardly. This cannot be held in. You know, if you're a man and you're told never to cry, pull yourself out of that and allow yourself to cry. Or if you're a woman and you just feel like you have to be strong, find a place to not be strong. Find a place where you feel safe, where you can just let it all out. I know you don't want to do this in front of certain people, and that's okay. That's why I'm saying find a place to do it. If you need to drive off and find that quiet place where you can be by yourself, just to let it all out. And I know it's going to come again, and it's going to hurt, and you're going to have to go through some more challenges through whatever you're dealing with. Because losing a loved one is not something that I wish upon anyone. And, you know, there are still loved ones in my life that I am worried that it's going to be close to that time for them as well. And how am I preparing? I can't prepare, just like no one can prepare when somebody leaves our life. So what do? I make sure to remind myself that yes, they could be gone any day. And what am I doing to make sure that I've said enough, or that I've shown them or told them how much I care about them and how much I appreciate and value them in my life? And what better day to think about that than on Thanksgiving? Even if you don't celebrate, just be thankful for the people that are in your life now, and those that are maybe nearing a bad situation or getting close to passing on. All you can do is be there as much as you can for them so that they have as much support before things turn. This is one of the hardest things to talk about. It's not something I enjoy telling you that, as things come to an end, you should do this, but sometimes we just have to face it. We have to face these realities and accept that there's really nothing we can do but be there for someone in any way we can. And if someone has already passed and you're going through your mind like, I should have done this or I should have done that, just know that that's perfectly normal. And even if you did everything possible, you'd still be thinking what else you could have done. And sometimes there's really nothing you can do at all. So give yourself a break. If you're in that position, give yourself a break and be okay with moving on so you can be there for other people and especially yourself as you move through life. And with that, I want you to open your mind and step into your power and be firm in your decisions and actions so that you can create the life you want. Always take steps to grow and evolve. You are powerful beyond measure. And above all, and this is something I absolutely know to be true about you, you are amazing.